You just got some new reporting, I'm told, about an attack on commercial vessels near where you are right now. Tell us more about what you're learning.
That's right, Wolf. This exclusive access here aboard the USS Abraham Lincoln is coming at a time when there are escalating tensions right near where I am. We're in the Arabian Sea, and just today, Wolf, Iran launched strikes against 3 vessels that were trying to transit through the strait, through the Oman route. That was a route established a couple of months ago. So this is escalating already heightened tensions, even though there is this memorandum of understanding in place right now. One U.S. official I spoke to said what Iran did today is a gross violation of the memorandum of understanding. This person calling it illogical. Someone else I spoke to said Iran clearly trying to flex its muscles right now. As you know, the negotiations are on pause due to the funeral of the former Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei. But right now, Iran is using this time clearly to be provocative. In fact, the view from the U.S. officials I've been speaking to is that this is the most provocative Iran has been since that memorandum was put in place in mid-June. Now, we know there have been skirmishes. In fact, after the memorandum was signed, Iran struck a vessel from Singapore, as we know, and in response to striking that vessel in the strait, CENTCOM did respond and with a retaliation against Iranian targets. Now, I'm told with what happened today with these 3 vessels that did sustain damage, no casualties, that right now the U.S. military is weighing its options and deciding how to proceed, what to do. And as you know, Wolf, the USS Abraham Lincoln has been a central platform since this conflict began. It's been here since the very beginning. It has offensive capability, defensive capability. So we'll have to wait and see what CENTCOM decides in terms of responding to these attacks by the Iranians today, right near where we are here.
And there are, about 5,400 sailors and Marines aboard the Abraham Lincoln, where you are right now. And they've been at sea now for quite a while. I suspect you've spoken to some of them right now. What's the mood that you're seeing? Mm-hmm.
Well, listen, a lot of them have been on board the ship since last November. It was sent to the Indo-Pacific and then came here in the Arabian Sea in theater late January, and then was part of the first wave of strikes against Iran in February. They've been working around the clock, but there's certainly a level of professionalism and still high morale from the folks I spoke to. They really feel like their job here is important, protecting freedom and democracy. And clearly, this is still ongoing, Wolf. As you know, an aircraft carrier, a big part of it is to launch flights. It's a floating airport, essentially. And we're here in the hangar. And you can see behind me here, there's F-18s, F-35s. These are some of the planes that have been used in the conflict to actually drop the bombs on Iranian targets. So what happens here, if I'll have John, my photojournalist, go over here, they can put these planes, once they become operational again, after some maintenance, on what's called an elevator, and then it'll bring up to the flight deck just above. So it's pretty incredible, the capabilities here. And then once it's on the flight deck itself is only 4.5 acres. So they use a catapult and working with the wind and the propulsions from the nuclear reactors for the flights to be able to take off. And they've been very busy. I mean, they have been able to have the flights take off every 15 to 20 seconds during really active times. And so where we are right here is where that maintenance takes place. But you have to think, Wolf, we're out in the middle of the Arabian Sea. It's not so easy to just quickly do maintenance. They have to have ships brought in to bring parts for these planes and helicopters and so forth. So it's really a logistical, complex environment, but they are still doing their best, and they say that they're still very ready. They're in a readiness state because of the ongoing escalations and tensions here where we are.
This just into CNN. The Trump administration has revoked the temporary oil waivers it issued as part of the memorandum of understanding with Iran.
That's right. The waivers had allowed Iran to sell its oil. CNN White House reporter Adam Cankren is with us now. We're 3 weeks into this 60-day agreement, and this is a significant development.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is just the latest test of what has not really been that long of a big ceasefire agreement. This is a 60-day agreement trying to get towards some kind of a permanent truce between the U.S. and Iran that would kind of finally end this fighting. This is really the latest complication, and it started with Iran firing on a trio of commercial vessels that were near this critical Strait of Hormuz, which is where a lot of the world's oil travels. And the U.S. has said, President Trump has said in the past, that When Iran does something like that, there will be a level of retaliation. This is what we're seeing the retaliation now. It's economic. This was the big concession that Iran got in the Memorandum of Understanding, this idea that they were now going to be able to sell their oil freely without sanction, a huge boon for them economically. The Treasury Department today revoking that very abruptly in clear retaliation to these strikes that we saw on the ships earlier today.
What do we know about where negotiations stand right now? Because there was some back and forth, and this isn't the first incident of some kinetic action in the Strait of Hormuz, though this is obviously the most serious retaliation so far by the U.S.
Yeah, I mean, officials have told us that the talks have been productive, but we haven't really seen any kind of clear progress toward, what we would call a bigger, longer term truce. And nobody really kind of thought this would happen, this early, but it's still a big test right now.
U.S. Central Command just announced it's conducting, quote, powerful strikes against Iran, just as NATO leaders are gathering for a summit in Turkey. CNN's Kristen Holmes is there. And Kristen, this doesn't sound like any ceasefire I've ever heard of.
No, it certainly doesn't. And just a reminder, earlier in the evening, we reported that the administration had reimposed sanctions as a form of financial retaliation against Iran because of these strikes on commercial vessels in the Strait of Hormuz that happened yesterday. It seemed at that point that that was the only kind of retaliation that they were going to do until just about 15 minutes ago when CENTCOM announced that they were launching these strikes in Iran as another form of retaliation for striking those vessels. Here's what they posted on X. They said, U.S. Central Command forces have begun launching a series of powerful strikes against Iran to impose heavy costs for targeting and attacking commercial shipping crewed by innocent civilians in an international waterway. The U.S. strikes are in response to Iranian attacks on 3 commercial vessels that were transiting the Strait of Hormuz. Iran's demonstrated aggression was unwarranted, dangerous, and a clear violation of the ceasefire. Now, I do want to get to the NATO of it all in one second, but just a quick reminder that part of the deal in the Memorandum of Understanding for the ceasefire, the 60-day negotiating period, was that in exchange for the lifting of the sanctions as well as the removal of the blockade in the Strait of Hormuz, Iran would help the safe passage for these commercial vessels. This is the second time we've seen Iran break this. Now, I do want to just quickly note, we are now here where the President of the United States is launching these on a country that borders with Iran. It seems like somewhat of a risky move to launch these attacks while President Trump is in the region. But one thing to point out is something he said earlier when he was talking about the president of Turkey, his close friend, he called him. He said that he could have joined Iran because they are allies and that he could have fought against the United States, but he didn't. So there is a bit there of protection that he feels from the president of Turkey and the relationship that they have. And also, it might even be some sort of power flex that he is in this region and launching these strikes in Iran, which is just so close by.